is Drupal development with PHPStorm and Xdebug. My name is Chris Haynes. I'm a senior software engineer for ICF Olson in their digital division. I started with them as a contractor in November of 2015. First time I touched Drupal was in 2011 when I was in school. I would consider primarily a back-end developer, but if I'm charged or told to do front-end development and theming, I will. Hence why I know Xdebug. And I'm currently certified as a Drupal 8 site builder and developer, and that's just because we're partners with Acquia. The number one question for me when I first thought about doing this talk was pretty much, why am I doing this? Like, why am I using PHPStorm and let alone compared to any other IDE? I mean, there's Atom, there's a whole bunch of them that are really, really good. The number one thing that I don't put up on here was that my work paid for it. Right, that's the number one thing. There are a lot of use cases within PHPStorm where you can get it for free. A couple of them include if you're an educational person, so either a student or teacher, you can get it and use it for free. If you are a nonprofit, they have ways for you to go through that avenue to be able to get it at certain increments for free. And so even if you just want to try it and use it, JetBrains, they have the ability for you guys to use it. When it comes to Drupal, the few things that I like are the code formatting, code sniffing and linting, enforcing Drupal coding standards. I should change that because it doesn't really enforce Drupal coding standards. It just tells you when there's a Drupal coding standard error that you can fix. Code completion, Drupal support documentation links that will link you directly to Drupal.org documentation pages. Integrated Drush console and the commands, it'll autocomplete the commands as well. And then the most important reason, which is an integration into Xdebug. I set up my slides to be, because I want this to be mostly a demo so that you guys can see kind of really how straightforward and easy it is to set up. So everything that I'm doing here you can find on this link, which is JetBrains documentation page for setting this up specifically for Drupal. There are a couple different things depending on if you're doing Drupal 7 versus Drupal 8, because in Drupal 8 you include Symfony, and Symfony is a different plugin and a different bridge that you need to bring into PHPStorm. So you can use that on the slides later, and I already have them posted on my talk. I haven't tweeted them out yet, but I probably should. I forget the whole Twitter thing exists.
What's your handle?
Haynes CW. I have a slide at the end that's got all my handles. So the first things we want to do is we want to prepare PHPStorm so that it uses Xdebug. And the very first thing you do is you'll go through into the system preferences and look under the Xdebug spot to make sure that there are a few things that are there and not changed by anybody else. The biggest thing is that you are using the default port, which is 9000. You can change that if you want to, depending on firewall settings and wherever you're at, so that it will work with a port that you're using. And that's pretty much the only reason I ever opened this page, is to make sure that that port is working. And if I ever have any issues every once in a while, I'll go back in there and double check it. But if you can see under the settings part of it, this is where code sniffing, composer, mess detector thing, everything that you could ever want, Drupal, Google App Engine, like everything that you could do with PHP, they have something in there that you can set up and use with PHPStorm. There's nowhere near enough time in this talk to try to talk about everything. So I thought about trying to work with a colleague of mine who's a PHPStorm fanatic and uses the Behat integration. I know that you use Behat integration already, and you got a little hotkey button on your Mac. Not all of us can get those new Macs though. So that will basically let you know that it will work. From there, we want to set up Acquia Dev Desktop. So I started with Acquia Dev Desktop just because it's probably the easiest one to work with. You just click on the preferences, go to the config tab. You want to pick your version of PHP. So there's got 4 different versions right now, like 5.5, 5.6, 5.3 or 2 or something like that, and 7. And then you just open the INI file and uncomment this line. If you've never done it before, you're going to uncomment this line and you're going to add this line. So they don't even have that in there. I'm going to try to reach out to the Acquia Dev Desktop team so that they can make a button that people can do this, especially since so many front-end themers are turning on Xdebug and using it for render arrays. It should just be like, you click a button, they'll enable Xdebug on every single version of PHP, automatically restart it, and away you go.
And as a former Acquia, yes, that's a feature request that's been in the queue for a while.
Yes.
And my experience with Dev Desktop, every time you upgrade it, it forgets this. So you have to do it again.
Yep. And I think what it's going to end up coming down to is it's not just going to be a feature request. I think someone's just going to have to do it for them. And if that's me, so be it. I don't use Acquia Dev Desktop right now. This was a solution on one of our projects, mainly because the other developer, who was the tech lead, was not accustomed to Drupal VM. I prefer using Drupal VM for everything, and as Jeff would tell you from earlier, there's a lot of more advanced parts of Drupal VM that I've been leading into, so I primarily do that side of it, but because of one guy on our team, I learned how to do this, and it was pretty straightforward. And so if you're wondering, that is what the settings or the config thing is. Whenever you click Acquia Dev Desktop, you click Preferences, that's what it looks like. And this is a pretty old picture because it doesn't even have PHP 7 on here or PHP 5.6. I took that from their documentation page. That's how old that page has been up there. But that's the edit. Like you select the file, you hit edit, it opens it up in your default text editor. I prefer to just do Command F to find it and just type XDE, and it'll take you right down to the line for the Xdebug that you'll want to uncomment and add the other line into it. From there, you need to go into PHPStorm and you need to set up the remote debug server. This can get a little bit tricky if you have multiple servers for one project, or basically when one project is multiple sites and they live on different servers. This is usually something that doesn't happen in the Drupal VM world, but I've seen people basically hack their way into this, and you can get it to work. You can set up multiple servers and it will listen on both of them servers, and PHPStorm will still work as long as you're using the same IDE key. Going through there's nice detailed instructions on how to do it. And finally, you'll end up getting to the point where you have your local setup, and it tells you everything you want to do. That the default port is going to be, it's not going to be 8080, it's going to be 9000. I need to change that picture. But that's basically saying, here's the host, here's the port. I want to use Xdebug because there's other versions of Xdebug, there's other debuggers out there. Zend has one of their own. But I believe that one costs you, you have to have a subscription to the whole Zend factory of things. Does it? I don't remember. Don't quote me on that. And then the other part of it for Drupal VM, straightforward, simple. Make sure you're looking at their documentation. It's very, very good. I'm going to be adding to it and a few other things, but the most important section in here is literally just this section. And make sure, so when I took this at the time, he was defaulting these to 1. These are now defaulted to 0, I think, except for one of these, but this first one is the one you want. This is the one that the Apache server runs, and that's the one that gets turned on so that it knows how to do it. You'll use this one if you're trying to debug Drupal console commands, and you got to run the console command. So when it runs PHP in command line, that's the one you'll want to turn on. So from here, I'll give you a nice little slide that is my trigger to go into demo time. For you guys real quick. That's what you guys are seeing. So in Acquia Dev Desktop, you're going to come up here to Acquia Dev Desktop. This is different when you're trying to do it on Windows because Windows doesn't do it this way. They have their own little part in there for it. Go to Preferences, here's your tab, go to Config at the top there. You can see they're now up to 5 different versions of PHP. You select the one that you have currently running for your site, and so if you use it, you'll double check right here, this PHP version for each one of your sites. That's just kind of where I wish that there was just one place you just go and it worked. Edit it, Command Find, XDE, Enter. I've already enabled it to speed up time, but normally this is disabled and you have to add that. If you want, there are a lot of more things that you can do with Xdebug, and that's where you want to also add all the extra debug commands or debug flags for it to turn on or turn off specific features of Xdebug, because I know you can do profiling with Xdebug and a lot of really advanced stuff, but I don't. I just need it for figuring out why my render array looks so awesome. From there, the one thing you have to remember is to stop and start this Dev Desktop, because the current Apache server is running right now, and if you don't restart it, it won't reread that INI file, so it won't work. I've already got it working for us, so we can just go from there. The example that I'm going to be going with you to show you the cool parts of PHPStorm is going to be with Drupal VM, and so I've already got that thing set up as an empty project. I just need to get to it. Ta-da, Drupal VM. So in here, I need to just go like this. Remember this, pstorm space period. That's the default command that you have to open this current folder in PHPStorm. If you don't put the period, it'll just open PHPStorm and it won't do anything. We'll open it up, take you to over where you're at. I need to close this project first.
They might have changed it. Mine is PHPStorm.
Does it?
If PStorm doesn't work, try PHPStorm.
Yeah. But if it doesn't and you want it to be PStorm, or if you just want it to be P, I'll show you how to do that.
Yeah, you can make an alias.
Yeah. So PHPStorm is not running. Run it. It will open up the project in PHPStorm right where you want it. And this is kind of what's like why I tell people to choose PHPStorm. And it has nothing to do with about the 3 minutes that I have to figure out what to say here, because if you look in the bottom right corner of my screen, there's a little bar. And that little bar is IntelliSense running through my entire project, trying to figure out everything it can about here. And then at the same time, I'm going to start sweating up here, because this thing is going to turn into overdrive and turn into a big heat sink. And I'm going to get hot because it's just going to kick in. But once we're... once all that is read in, like IntelliSense will just instantly kick in and start telling you what to do. Like, you don't have to worry about finding the settings or doing whatever you need to. It just works. It's nice. It speeds up development a ton. So there's the first two. Drupal support. This looks like it's a Drupal module. It is not a Drupal module, but it's an entire Drupal site. So yes, I will enable this. And then from there, a few things that are a lot better about the newer version of PHPStorm compared to the older version. If you click this, it already knows what your installation path is, and it already knows which version of Drupal you're using. And in this case, I believe if you did not have the Symfony Bridge or any of the other things, that's where it would ask you to install those plugins, and then it would work from there. So then, do you guys hear it? It's awesome. It's getting on here. So that basically allows us to say, hey, this is going to be working all for Drupal development. And the way that you can double check that is when you come into the preferences, there is editor, I believe it's in code style, PHP, like this section right here, if you notice, it all looks tightened up compared to normal. It's because it's already been changed to work with Drupal. And the way you used to do that before is that you used to have to hit manage and pick something, and then you have to bring in your code style and pick one that would work, or any one of these default ones. And you can pick anything. You can change anything you want about it. Spaces, wrapping, PHP doc comments, arrangements. So you can set this up to work how you want it, but I don't touch it because it's using the with Drupal 8 and the newer versions of Drupal, they've defaulted to PHP or PSR4 coding standards, which is pretty much what all PHP developers are using anyways. So I just leave it and go. You know, I had one other section in here that was basically going to be about Composer, but it didn't come up. So we will skip that. Usually it'll recognize that it's a composer, and what it'll try to do is it will say that this folder, which is grayed out right now, right? Yep. Is going to be like not indexed because it's your vendor folder. All this stuff should not be changed, so it doesn't need to worry about it. So this might be with the newer version of PHPStorm that I've had since then, because on the other project that I have, like, you literally put and specified which one of these were certain things, and you could change the colors of them so that you knew certain things about it, like your private files. Vagrant.
You can do that with an event log.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. There it is. That's right, because I probably closed the first one. But yeah, these are the composer interpreter, so it knows where your composer.json is. I always leave this at the default one because I'm pretty sure it takes it in from your global space, so it knows how to interpret it no matter what. You can just hit OK, and then it will go on from there. Hat configuration was updated. Thanks. So yeah, that's pretty much the only reason why I use PHPStorm. There are some times where I choose not to use PHPStorm because this is basically a Java application running on a Java JVM, and my favorite thing to do, which I'm sure the JetBrains people don't like doing, is I bring up the activity monitor and you'll see who's at the top of the list. And so this is saying something, considering this is my VM. Like, it's literally taking everything, and I know I've closed down a ton of my Google Chrome, but normally I don't have this much gigabytes available. So that's kind of like, there's some times where I just can't use PHPStorm. I just open Atom real quick and roll. All right, so from here, we'll go into setting up. Did I minimize it? I did, didn't I? Yep. We'll go into setting up, adding your servers. So here's your edit configurations for your servers. Defaults, I don't worry about it, but you want to check right here. Go down to PHP Remote Debug. You can name it however you want to. I always name it based off of Jira key. Mainly because it's the only thing I can think of throwing in there for a name. Go through, get your server, add your server. The server right here is I need to find some stuff first. Here. I'm sure if you watched Jeff or went to Jeff Geerling's talk, you saw this page. So you know that your server has a host name. I should have known that. So let's come in here, edit configurations, add a server, PHP remote debug, server, add unnamed local Xdebug apply. Okay. Local. Make sure you're using specify your IDE key too. You can change that if you want to. I never have had a reason to change it yet, but I'm sure someone will find a reason. And I'll show you what this correlates to later in the browser when you're ready to go to do any testing. So from there, you'll see on the top right, you now have a phone and a bug. This bug brings up the Xdebug Console. And then the phone is the listening. Basically, you can just tell it not to listen if you don't want it to, and it won't listen for any incoming traffic. But I believe if you forget that, it'll still listen silently on you and still pick it up anyways. So now we can come over here to local.midcamp.com. Need to find doc.root, index.php. Let's snapshot that kernel. And so this right here is key. I don't have this in my slides. I apologize. Hopefully your guys' memory is better than mine. This is the extension. This is one extension for Chrome that I found very, very useful. If you don't do this, you need to do this, which is create a bunch of, so if I hover over it, you see how it's just a JavaScript thing? Like all you're really doing is setting a cookie for Xdebug Trace, and so that will start the trace. For the debugger, which is the one most of you guys would be using, it literally sets the Xdebug session plus PHPStorm, which is your IDE key. And so the server, based off of that session key, or that session cookie, knows that the connection is there and this is where it needs to work, because this is the page that I'm working on. I literally leave that piece in here just for these talks, because that's how I started. Until someone else was like, hey, did you know that this Chrome extension existed? I'm like, no. That's awesome. So Xdebug helper, get that. If I have time, I'll just update my slides depending on when you see it, and I'll just throw that in there as another random slide for you guys to use. So with the extension, you'll get here, which is basically debug, profile, or trace. Obviously you see a pattern. It's the start and stop JavaScript for them. So you start debugging on this thing. You have your breakpoint in here. You reload the page. If I did it correctly, it should kick me over, and I have a feeling I didn't do it correctly. No, I didn't do it correctly. So one way of testing this, so that's an issue. When you're doing stuff with Drupal VM, it is a remote server. It's a really close remote server. So you have to set up path mappings. And what it's basically saying to do, like this one, because I put the breakpoint in index.php, it's saying, where does this work on the server? So in my case, the path mapping on the server, what you only really want to do is map doc.root to doc.root. No, I can't remember where to do that for.
Try Vagrant.
Well, this is supposed to, like, So basically, what I'm trying to do here is I could just say to use this, and this is going to fail. But the way what you want to set up with your path mapping is if you do it this way, you're going to be doing it for every single file, and so you want to go into the path mappings for this project and set up a starred version, which will say all of these files from this folder star match up with all of these files on the remote server star. And that basically is for, like, on the IntelliSense side, like whenever you go to do something and you click on like anywhere in here that could be a link, it will open the file for you and step you through the file on what's happening. I'll show an example on that with the local version, but I hadn't had it set up yet for this part because it's a little bit more complicated and time consuming. So in here, I basically put it in here just so that I can show you this section right here where it finds the cookie. The cookie is PHPStorm, and so you know that everything's working. All the server variables are in here as well. Varred up like the, you could so number one, if you were trying to figure out who Apache's running as, that's what user is, www data. If you didn't know where the home directory and any of those others, like all these are just server variables that you can get, which I think some front-end developers want to know for some of the cross-site scripting, JavaScript that you end up having to do when you go across a couple different servers within a multi-site or something like that. And that's pretty much it. Like with the IntelliSense and the very small little setup within PHPStorm, like you can get it to work for what you need. And I will try to make sure that I'm more prepared for the path mappings next time. But from here, I'll just go over to the other project that I have that I wanted to show you, like real use cases, like real world scenarios of why you use Xdebug. So this is a site that I did for our client, which is the Belize Travel Bureau. It is the travelbelize.org, and it is currently live and is a D8 site. So I've already got it. That's not right. Why do you do this to me? This should already be in here. That is weird. I wonder if it's a newer version. It doesn't even have my server in here. Yay. I love demos. This is literally the one I just had this open, like before this one, and now it's saying it can't find it. That's fine. We'll go with it. Oh, I think I know why. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Shame on me. So, Acquia Desktop, when you click on their little terminal button, they put you in the doc group. So I thought it was a new project because the .idea folder didn't exist, and so all the configuration wasn't there. And there we go. So this is the part where I was telling you before with path mappings, where you can set up certain folders for it to exclusively include or not include. So for example, tests show up as green. I believe vendors still just shows up normal like that. And so you can tell it to be a little bit more performant to ignore certain files. But in this example, we're going to put a breakpoint into a theme preprocess hook for a region, because in a particular scenario that I had was that on this site, these banners their background color was defined within the content type as a variable. So anytime that it hit that content type, based off that variable, we could change its colors. This form, however, is a custom module built form, ergo I didn't have that variable. So in order to fix that, we wrote the theme preprocess function, and based off of the route, I was able to match the route name and then assign the variable that it needed right here on 122 for the variable that was in the template. And so me, being the awesome front-end developer that I am, decided that I don't know what's in vars. And so instead of trying to do a Symfony dump command on every single region that this preprocess function runs on, I decided this is the perfect option for, or perfect use case for Xdebug. So I came in here, put in my breakpoint, and then refresh my page. Why didn't that work?
Listen.
Thank you. So let's make sure we have this open too. Waiting on a connection. Connected. There. See it kick you over?
Mm-hmm.
And so what it did is it came down and it's like it stopped me. Right here is where I'm at. Theme, Travel Belize theme, line 121. And it has told me a few things. Just it kind of ignored Node because we figured that out once upon a time ago. And so I literally needed to go into vars to figure out what I had in there to access to try to even get anything. So you just go into the elements and you know what region it is from there. You can also figure out what the cache is and all the cache tags that are there, but you can only go so far. You can only go so deep in the tree, and I haven't looked to figure out how we can go deeper into this without changing the location of your breakpoint. So if you like are at the point and you got a render array and you can put the breakpoint there, it will give you those cache values or those cache tags. But since it's an array, it literally just sees an array because it only goes so deep. Well, you see max age -1 because somebody didn't put a max age on it, and then children, a bunch of other attributes that you normally would have to do a dump on to even get to it. Then you'd have to search through an awful dump, or and I think most of you guys would probably use something like Kint or anything like that, which just completely bloats the page load time. So that was how I was able to figure out that I could get this variable, and that I knew that the variable for that page or the route name for that page was that value. So put that value in there. I knew that it would only run this code on that page. I'd set the header, and away we went. And so this piece right here was the original piece that was in there that our themer had put in that would get the node's field header theme value and store it as the header theme, and it would make that banner dynamic to whatever you stored as that piece of content. So the only thing I knew is that node was node. I had to figure out what that one value is, and the fastest way possible. If you're unfamiliar with this, there's literally the rerun, so you can just tell it to rerun the page. So like you figured something out, now you need to come in here and you realize, oh, you know what, I need my breakpoint right here. You can just hit rerun and it will reload the page. If I switched over here fast enough, you would see the page reload. So it can control the page for you too, and you don't have to bounce back and forth. You can tell it to just exclusively stop. You can get a list of where your breakpoints are at and disable them breakpoints from this list. There's a bunch of different conditions that you can put in there as well if you want to do more like really advanced debugging. I would assume that there's something, like I haven't had a reason to use that yet, but once you get into here, where did these went away? There's normally a step into, there we go. So there's the step into, and then there is the force step into, and there's a whole bunch of different like step out of, and I believe those are specific functions. So if you want to step into one line at a time, you can literally just go like there, and it will tell you everything that it's doing, where it's going from one place to the next in the code, on how it's going through to get things. So you know that the current route match.php, which I would assume is a core routing function, and it will tell you like all the different variables that you need. And you can, if you had time, like this is how I learned what happened during Drupal 7's bootstrap process. I literally put it on bootstrap and I just stepped into it to figure out what it was doing because I was bored. I probably could have looked at the documentation, but I'm a backend developer. I want to know which functions it's calling, like what you can do and what it's trying to do. And then there's the force step into, which will force you down to the next line of code within the current file that you're on.
Even if the if statement doesn't.
Correct.
Wow.
So you can break past your ifs. And so if you think that like you need to get into something and you know it's not going to get there, you can force it into another one.
Wow.
This is a very powerful tool. I started using this back in the days in college when it was Eclipse, and all of this functionality behind debugging came from Eclipse and for me in that area. So this is how I learned how to debug. If it's simple and I know I'm getting nothing back but like an array, like I know I have an array and there's 10 values in it, I'll just dump it to the page and away I go, because I can see it go and see it like transform in your page. But if it's something complicated like render arrays, I will just put the breakpoint in there and then figure out what's happening, because we had HisenseUSA.com was another Drupal 8 site that we had deployed live last year. We spoke about it at at Acquia Engage, and the main developer, the tech lead, like we had to have a sit down so that I could show him how to set up Xdebug, because something was manipulating his value in his render array somewhere along the process, and he had spent 8 hours trying to figure out what it was just by simple dumps and simple prints and couldn't figure it out. As soon as we got it in there, he had it fixed and committed in 15 minutes. Like, unbelievable. He's like, now I know how to do it.
And did he actually run this at that time, or were you still running the shell and running the debug process?
What do you mean by running the show?
Was he actually stepping through? You taught him how to use the tool, or he already knew how to use it? He just didn't know how to.
I think he inferred how to use it. He did go to UW Stout, and my brother went to UW Stout, so I figured if my brother knew how to use a debugger, he knew how to use a debugger.
Okay.
So, because it's like UW Stout, it's applied math, computer science. So they're math guys, but then they get computer science. So I figured he at least knew how to use a debugger, so you can go through it. The step out of does exactly kind of what you said, is it will step you backwards out of your function and where you need to go. I never had a reason to use any of these, and the one thing that I did figure out really quickly are those. So like, number one, I had to figure out what the up arrow in Macworld to know which button to push, but then you can just really quickly use your hotkeys to step in and out, back and forth to get what you need. But the one thing, like you said, the most powerful thing that I forgot about the Eclipse days was that you can force your way into an if statement that is false.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, because whenever you're writing your testing, that's how you would write your regression testing, is to figure out what a value is when it's false, so that you can get that value and use that value as a test value to prove that it's for when the test runs that this is going to fail for sure, because that's the value that's supposed to be failing, and so on and so forth down the tree. So from here, anyone got any questions?
You talked about testing just there. How would you set a breakpoint in like your tests? Because tests don't run in the browser, so how?
You weren't listening. So you remember how when I was on, it's kind of funny. You bring up a good point because that's the CLI part of it. So whenever you want to turn on Xdebug on Acquia Desktop, I only turned it on for remote debug. But then there's also like in the in here for Drupal VM, there is the Xdebug CLI. And so CLI is command line interface. And so anytime that you're running command line stuff, you'll want to make sure that you're turning it on so that it will know to run for that as well. I haven't run a command like that. Even though I've developed and added to Drupal Console, I hadn't needed to, like, it was a really simple add-on, so I hadn't needed to do it. But a coworker of mine did this in PHPStorm for working with Drupal Console, and it was he tried to tell it to me, and we didn't have time. But what I should have just told him is what my boss tells me all the time. Yeah, it's a great spot for a blog post. So just write a blog post about it really quickly on how to do it, how to set it up, how you used it, and so hopefully I can convince him to do that. If not, hopefully he'll get into a series with me on like PHPStorm and the functionalities you can do, because you can include Git, you can include bhat, you can include a lot of stuff just within PHPStorm, and you can also alias that stuff. Yes?
So I hope I'm not the only one who's had this problem, but I cannot find a PHP plugin, or an Xdebug plugin for PHP 7 for Acquia Dev Desktop on my Mac. I can find DLLs for Windows. I can't get Xdebug working at PHP 7. Does anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't support it yet, I think.
Yeah, I haven't. You wanna try it?
It's accurate. Drupal VM.
PHP 7.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who's had this problem.
Yeah.
Because it didn't come with one, and I went to try to find one, I couldn't find one anywhere.
Yeah. So with me for all this, I do most of my stuff in Drupal VM, and we haven't upgraded our VMs to using PHP 7 yet, so I haven't ran into that issue. But if we were to use if I were to try it for you, I would try it in here first to see how to do it, because this would be like the most direct way to do it, because they bring in and they run their own version of Apache, their own version of MySQL. So that if you were having issues on a remote server, I would probably suggest coming here first to see if there's anything like what you can do and what you can get away with, because at least in here the files are on your computer and you can just change them, figure out what you need to do to fix it so that you can get it working at the server.
So this is where if you go to 7, and you can if you go to terminal, you can find where they've got all their stuff in there where the file is. And there's no, in the XD folder, where all the extensions are, there's no Xdebug file. There's no SO file for it.
Gotcha.
So I don't,
I can look into that, because like I haven't hit PHP 7 yet.
Yeah.
Like we've just barely begun like doing anything, and the one thing that we were trying to do was get Drupal VM to build a 1604 server, and there's currently a bug in Drupal VM for 1604 because 1604 mandates that you use Python 3 and Ansible mandates Python 2.
Oh, no.
So there is a way to do it manually to run the script and say, here's what you need to do for your interpreter. But the way I was doing it was with the vagrant command, and so I need to figure out how to get it to work that way. So Jeff found a workaround for it, and he patched it he committed it like a week ago. But now I just got to get it to work within our current workflow.
So I think I've gone there before. Like all I can find is the Windows.
But otherwise, of course,
I can try it again. Somebody may have
sprinting. Otherwise, I would be letting the camp down and then joined in, and then I also put all my communication on here on however you want to get a hold of me. So if you did forget my name, it's on there. Email, Twitter. I don't usually check Twitter but once a week. And that's because I'm hoping that a specific food truck is coming to our place. Drupal.org and GitHub. So it's called Pepper Jack's Express. America's best Philly.
There's not a Pepper Jacks in the Chicagoland area. The closest one is Iowa.
Yes, I know, but it's so awesome. And
If you get to Kansas City, Iowa, I think it's in Dubuque.
yeah, they love me so much they let me buy their meat directly from them.
Yeah.
It's
It's
awesome.
better than Penn Station.
Yeah, yeah. It's so the type of meat it is. It's called a quick release steak or quick steak. Literally, as soon as you put it on there, it just starts falling apart as you cook it. It's awesome.
You're making me hungry.
I know. Now I'm hungry. So.
We